It was a bright, sunny Saturday morning. The kind of day where you just want to be outside, feel the warm sun on your face, and maybe get some work done. My name's Jake, at least, that's what we'll call me for this story. I'm just a regular guy, or so it seems. That morning, all I wanted to do was mow my lawn. Easy, right? Push the mower, cut the grass, and enjoy a peaceful weekend. That was my plan. But where I live, things don't always go the way you want. Not with Karen around. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. Oh no. She was the boss of our neighborhood, or at least she thought she was. She ran the Homeowners Association, HOA for short, like she was the queen of everything. Picture this, a lady with a loud voice, a clipboard always in her hand, and a frown that could scare a dog away. Everyone knew her. Everyone was a little afraid of her. She'd march up and down the street, telling people what to do. Your fence is too tall, she'd yell. Those flowers are the wrong color, she'd snap. She had rules for everything, rules she made up just to boss us around. Me. I didn't care about her rules. I just wanted my grass to look nice. I wasn't hurting anyone. My lawnmower wasn't even that loud. But Karen didn't see it that way. To her, I was breaking some big, important law she'd invented in her head. She had other plans for me that day, and they weren't nice plans. She wanted to ruin my peaceful Saturday. She wanted to show me who was in charge. Or at least, she thought she could. Here's the fun part, Karen didn't know something about me. She thought I was just plain old Jake, the guy who mows his lawn and keeps to himself. She didn't know I had a secret. A big one. A secret that was going to turn her whole day upside down. Can you imagine that? Someone like Karen, who thinks she knows everything, missing something huge right under her nose. That's what makes this story so good. Stick with me, because you're going to love what happens next. Let's set the scene a little more. My neighborhood is pretty normal. It's got houses with little yards, kids riding bikes, and dogs barking sometimes. Nothing fancy, just a regular place where people live. I've got a small house with a front yard that's not too big. The grass grows fast in the spring, so I like to keep it short. It's not a big deal, just something I do to keep things neat. I don't bother anyone, and most people don't bother me. Most people except Karen. Karen lived a few houses down from me. Her house was perfect. Too perfect, if you ask me. The grass was always cut just right, the bushes were trimmed into little squares, and her mailbox never had a speck of dirt on it. She acted like that gave her the right to tell everyone else how to live. She'd walk around with that clipboard, writing things down, glaring at people. If your trash can was out too long, she'd knock on your door. If your car was parked an inch too close to her driveway, she'd leave a nasty note. She loved being in charge. She loved making people feel small. That Saturday, I wasn't thinking about Karen at first. I was just happy to be outside. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and I had my old lawnmower ready to go. It's one of those push mowers, not super loud, not super fast, but it gets the job done. I pulled it out of the garage, filled it with gas, and started pushing it across my yard. The grass was a little tall, but nothing crazy. I figured I'd be done in an hour, then I could sit on my porch with a cold drink and relax. That's all I wanted. Simple. Easy. Peaceful. But then I heard her voice. "Jake," she shouted. I looked up, and there she was, storming across the street. Her flip-flop slapped the pavement with every step. Her clipboard was tucked under her arm, and her phone was already in her hand. She looked mad, like, really mad. Her face was all scrunched up, and her eyes were narrowed at me like I'd just kicked her cat or something. I stopped mowing for a second and waved, trying to be nice. "Hey, Karen," I said. "Nice day, huh?" She didn't think it was a nice day. Not anymore. "What do you think you're doing?" she barked. I pointed at the mower. Mowing my lawn," I said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. But to Karen, it wasn't obvious. To Karen, I was doing something wrong. Something bad. Something she had to stop. See, that's the thing about Karen. She didn't just watch the neighborhood, she controlled it. Or she tried to. If she didn't like something, she'd make a big fuss until it went her way. And that day, She didn't like me mowing my lawn. She didn't like the noise. She didn't like that I was doing it on her street, in her perfect little kingdom. She thought she could yell at me and I'd just stop, say sorry, and go inside like a scared little kid. That's what she wanted. That's what she always got from everyone else. But I wasn't like everyone else. I wasn't going to let her boss me around. Not that day. Not ever. And here's the best part, Karen had no idea what was coming. She thought she was the smartest person on the block, the one who always won. She didn't know I had something up my sleeve. She didn't know my secret. And she definitely didn't know that her big, loud plan to ruin my day was about to backfire in the funniest, most perfect way. So what do you think? Can someone like me, a regular guy with a lawnmower, hide something huge from a nosy, bossy lady like Karen? Can a secret stay secret even when she's watching every move? I bet you're curious now. I bet you want to know what happens next. Good. Because this story is just getting started. Keep listening, and I'll tell you how a simple Saturday turned into the day Karen wished she'd never messed with me. Ready? Let's go. So there I was, just pushing my lawnmower back and forth across my yard. The sun was shining, the grass was getting shorter, and I was feeling pretty good. It was a normal Saturday morning, at least, I thought it was. But then Karen came. Oh boy, did she come fast. She stormed across the street like a wild animal chasing something. Her flip-flops went slap, slap, slap on the pavement, and her voice was loud enough to wake up the whole neighborhood. Jake, she yelled, pointing at me like I'd done something terrible. She held her phone up high, waving it around like it was a sword or a magic wand. That mower's too loud, she shouted. It's against HOA rules. Her face was all scrunched up, and her eyes were big and angry. She looked like she was ready to fight me right there in my own yard. I stopped pushing the mower for a second and looked at her. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted to finish my work and enjoy my day. So I tried to stay calm. Karen, I said, nice and slow, it's 10 a.m. on a Saturday. I'm allowed to mow my lawn now. That's the truth, right? People mow their lawns on Saturdays all the time. It's not a big deal. But to Karen, it was a big deal. A huge deal. She didn't care what I said. She didn't care about the time or the rules, the real ones, I mean. She only cared about her rules, the ones she made up in her head. Her face turned bright red, like a tomato ready to pop. No, she snapped. You're wrong. That noise is awful, and I won't stand for it. She shook her phone at me again. I'm calling 911, she said, her voice getting louder. You're disturbing the peace, Jake. This is serious. I couldn't believe it. Calling 911? Over a lawnmower? That's crazy. But that's Karen for you. She loved making everything a big, loud problem. I didn't know what to say. I just shrugged my shoulders like, okay, whatever, and went back to mowing. The mower hummed along, cutting the grass nice and even. I wasn't going to stop just because she was mad. Why should I? I wasn't doing anything wrong. But Karen didn't see it that way. She stood there on my lawn, tapping her foot, glaring at me like I was the worst person in the world. She thought she had all the power. She thought she could snap her fingers or her phone and make me do whatever she wanted. She started dialing. Hello, 911, she said, loud enough for me to hear. Yes, I need help. There's a man here making too much noise with his lawnmower. It's awful. You need to send someone right now. She kept talking, telling them how terrible I was, how I was ruining her day. She acted like I was some kind of criminal, like I was breaking into houses or something. All I was doing was mowing my lawn. Can you believe that? It was silly, but it was Karen. That's just how she was. I kept pushing the mower, trying to ignore her. The grass smelled fresh, and the sun felt nice. I wasn't going to let her ruin my morning. But I could feel her staring at me. Her eyes were like lasers, trying to burn holes in my back. She thought she was winning. She thought the police would come racing down the street, lights flashing, sirens blaring, just to stop me. She thought she'd get her way, like she always did. Everyone in the neighborhood knew how Karen worked. If she didn't like something, she'd yell and complain until it stopped. Most people just gave up and did what she wanted. Not me. Not today. Here's the thing, Karen didn't know something big. She thought she was the boss, standing there with her phone, calling the cops on me. She thought she was about to win this fight. But her big moment? It was about to flop. Big time. She had no idea what was coming. She didn't see the trouble heading her way. Have you ever seen someone dig their own grave without even knowing it? That's what Karen was doing. She was so busy yelling at me, so busy trying to be the queen of the block, that she didn't notice the real story unfolding right behind her. Let me tell you a little more about how this felt. Picture me, just a regular guy in a t-shirt and sneakers, pushing my mower back and forth. The mower made a steady vroom vroom sound, not too loud, just normal. I wasn't trying to bother anyone. I wasn't trying to start a fight. But Karen made it a fight anyway. She stood there, her flip-flops digging into my grass, her voice getting sharper and meaner. "You think you can ignore me," she said. "You think you're better than the rules? We'll see about that." I didn't answer. I just kept mowing. Why argue with her? She wasn't going to listen. She never listened. She only cared about being right, about being in charge. That's why everyone was scared of her. That's why people let her boss them around. But I wasn't scared. I wasn't going to back down. And deep down, I knew something she didn't. I had a little smile on my face, even as she yelled. Because this wasn't going to end the way she thought. The tension was building, like a storm cloud getting bigger and darker. Karen kept talking on her phone, telling the 911 lady all about my crime. She waved her free hand around, pointing at me, then at the mower, then at the sky, like even the sun was on her side. She was so sure of herself. So sure she'd get me in trouble. She didn't know her plan was about to fall apart. She didn't know she was the one who should be worried. I could hear her voice getting louder and louder. "Yes, officer, he's still doing it," she said into the phone. "He won't stop. You need to hurry." She sounded like a kid throwing a tantrum, but she thought she was so important. I almost laughed, but I kept it inside. Let her talk, I thought. Let her think she's winning. Because soon, very soon, she'd find out the truth. And oh boy, was it going to be good. So there we were, me with my mower, Karen with her phone, the sun shining down on us both. It was a battle, but not the kind she expected. She thought she was the hunter, and I was the one in trouble. But sometimes, the hunter doesn't see the trap until it's too late. Keep watching, because this story's about to get really fun. What do you think happens next? Can you guess? Let's find out together. So there I was, still pushing my lawnmower across the yard, while Karen stood there yelling into her phone. She was loud, really loud. Her voice bounced off the houses like she wanted the whole world to hear her. "Yes, 911, she shouted. "He's making noise. Too much noise. It's a lawnmower, and it's ruining everything." She kept going on and on, telling them how awful I was, how I was breaking her rules. She didn't stop for a second. She was too busy trying to get me in trouble, too busy trying to ruin my nice Saturday morning. But then I saw something strange. Something that made me tilt my head and think, huh, that's weird. 2 houses down the street, there was a police car. Yup, a real cop car, just sitting there. It wasn't moving. The lights weren't flashing, and the siren wasn't on. It was quiet, parked right by the curb like it had been there for a while. I squinted a little to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Nope, it was real. A black and white car with police written on the side. Odd, right? Why was it just sitting there? What was it doing? I didn't say anything about it. Not a word. I just kept mowing my lawn, pushing the mower back and forth, letting it hum along. The grass was getting shorter, and I was staying calm. Karen didn't notice the cop car at all. Not even a tiny peek. She was too caught up in her big plan to stop me. She kept screaming into her phone about noise violations and how I was disturbing the peace. She waved her arms around like she was directing traffic, her flip-flops stomping on my grass. She was so mad, so sure she was going to win, that she didn't see anything else. I guess she thought ruining my day was the only thing that mattered. But here's the thing, Karen didn't know I had some secrets up my sleeve. She thought I was just Jake, the guy with the noisy mower, the guy she could boss around. She didn't know I'd been talking to the neighbors lately. Oh yeah, I'd been chatting with them a lot. See, I wasn't the only one tired of Karen. Everyone was. The people next door, the family across the street, even the old guy with the little dog, they were all fed up. Fed up with her fines, her silly rules, her loud tantrums every time something wasn't perfect. I'd heard them talking when I went to get my mail or when I waved hello over the fence. They'd say things like, "She fined me $20 because my trash can was out too long," or "She yelled at me for planting red flowers instead of yellow." They were mad. Really mad. And they weren't just complaining, they were doing something about it. I'd heard whispers, little bits of talk here and there. Whispers about complaints piling up. Complaints about Karen. Lots of them. People were writing letters, making phone calls, telling the HOA and maybe even the police how mean she was. Something big was brewing, like a pot of soup getting ready to boil over. Karen didn't know any of this. She thought she was untouchable. She thought she was the queen of the neighborhood, the one who could do whatever she wanted. She'd march around with her clipboard, bossing everyone, thinking no one could stop her. But she was wrong. She didn't see the storm coming. Could she really be that clueless? Could she really miss all the signs? I mean, she was so busy yelling at me, so busy dialing 911, that she didn't even look around. She didn't see the cop car. She didn't hear the neighbors whispering. She didn't know I knew more than she thought. I kept mowing, keeping my eyes on the grass but sneaking little glances at that police car. It hadn't moved. The doors were still closed, and no one had gotten out. But it was there, just waiting. Waiting for what? I wasn't sure yet, but it made my heart beat a little faster. Something was up. Something big. And Karen? She was still ranting away, totally blind to it all. "He's still mowing," she shouted into her phone. "Can't you hear it? It's awful. Send someone quick." I almost wanted to laugh, but I didn't. I just kept pushing the mower, letting her talk. Let her yell, I thought. Let her think she's in charge. Because every word she said, every second she spent trying to get me in trouble, was bringing her closer to a big surprise. A surprise she wouldn't like one bit. The neighbors' complaints, that quiet cop car, my little secret, it was all starting to add up, like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. Let's think about this for a second. Picture me, mowing my lawn, the vroom vroom of the mower filling the air. Picture Karen, standing there with her phone, her face red, her voice loud. She thought she was the hero of the story, the one saving the neighborhood from my terrible noise. But she wasn't the hero. She was the one making trouble, and she didn't even know it. The cop car down the street was like a clue, a little hint that something was about to change. And the neighbors? They were like a team, working together behind her back. Karen didn't see any of it. She was too busy, too loud, too full of herself. I started to wonder what those cops were doing. Why were they just sitting there? Were they watching us? Were they waiting for something? I didn't know yet, but it made me curious. It made me keep going, keep mowing, keep watching. Karen didn't notice me looking. She didn't notice anything but her own voice. "This is unacceptable," she yelled. "I'm the HOA president. I say what's allowed." She sounded so proud, so sure. But pride can trick you. Pride can make you miss the truth. The tension was growing, like when you blow up a balloon and it gets bigger and bigger. Something was going to pop soon. I could feel it. Karen couldn't, though. She kept talking, kept complaining, kept digging herself deeper. She didn't know the neighbors were done with her. She didn't know I'd heard their plans. She didn't know about that cop car, sitting there like a quiet tiger ready to pounce. Could she really be that blind? Could she really not see what was happening? I smiled a little to myself as I mowed. Not a big smile, just a tiny one. This was getting good. Karen thought she was winning, but she was about to lose. Big time. What do you think? Can someone be so busy bossing people that they miss the real trouble? Can a secret stay hidden until the perfect moment? Let's keep going and see what happens next. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. So there we were, me mowing my lawn, Karen yelling into her phone, thinking she was about to get me in big trouble. The sun was still shining, The mower was humming, and she was in the middle of telling 911 how awful I was. "He's breaking the rules," she shouted. "You need to stop him." She was so loud, so sure she was the boss of everything. But then, something happened. Something huge. All of a sudden, the cop car, that quiet car parked 2 houses down, made a move. The door swung open. Not one, but 2 police officers stepped out. They were big guys, wearing dark uniforms with shiny badges. They didn't look happy. They didn't look rushed either, just calm, like they knew exactly what they were doing. And here's the best part, they didn't walk toward me. Nope. They started walking straight for Karen. Her jaw dropped. I mean, her mouth just fell open like a trapdoor, right in the middle of her sentence. She was still holding her phone up to her ear, but she stopped talking. She froze, staring at the cops as they got closer. "Ma'am," one of them said in a deep, serious voice, "we need to speak with you." Karen blinked fast, like she couldn't believe her eyes. She shook her head a little, still clutching that phone. "Me," she squeaked. "But I'm reporting him." She pointed at me with a shaky finger, like I was the bad guy here. That's when it hit her. That's when the truth smacked her right in the face. I stopped mowing my lawn. The mower went quiet, and I leaned on the handle, just watching. I couldn't help it, I grinned. A big, happy grin. "Karen," I said, loud enough for her to hear, "those cops aren't here for me. They're here for you." Her eyes got wide, like 2 big marbles. She didn't know what to say. She just stood there, looking from me to the officers, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I kept going, because this was too good to stop. "Half the neighborhood filed reports about you," I said. "They're tired of your harassment, your threats, and oh yeah, even faking HOA fines." That's right. Karen had been making up fines, telling people they owed money for silly things like wrong-colored curtains or too many plants. She'd been pocketing that cash for herself, thinking no one would catch her. But they did. The neighbors did. And now the cops knew too. The officers nodded, like they agreed with every word I said. The taller one, he had a mustache, looked right at Karen. "We've got a warrant, ma'am," he said. "You're coming with us." "A warrant? That's a paper that says the police can take you away if you've done something wrong." And Karen? She'd done a lot of wrong things. Her face went pale, like all the red drained out of it. She dropped her phone. It hit the grass with a little thud, and her 911 call? Done. Over. Nobody was coming to save her now. Her power trip? That big, loud show she'd been putting on? It was finished. Kaput. She stood there, staring at the cops, then at me, then back at the cops. "This is a mistake," she yelled. "I'm the HOA president. I make the rules. He's the one breaking them." She pointed at me again, but the officers didn't even look my way. They didn't care about my lawnmower. They didn't care about her rules. They were there for her, and she couldn't wiggle out of it. I crossed my arms and watched, still grinning. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. All her yelling, all her bossing, all her mean tricks, they were crashing down like a house of cards. The mustache cop stepped closer to her. "Ma'am," he said, "we've had complaints. A lot of them. People say you've been threatening them, making up fines, causing trouble. We've been looking into it, and we've got proof. Time to go." He reached for her arm, gentle but firm, like he wasn't taking no for an answer. Karen freaked out. "No," she shouted. "You can't do this. I'm in charge here." She tried to pull away, but the other cop, the one with short hair, stepped in too. "Let's not make this harder," he said. "Come with us now." She kept arguing, her voice getting higher and squeakier. "This is outrageous. You're supposed to arrest him. He's the problem." But nobody listened. Not the cops, not me, not the neighbors who were starting to peek out their windows. Oh yeah, the neighbors. They were watching now. Curtains moved, heads poked out, and I swear I saw a few smiles. They'd been waiting for this too. All those times Karen had yelled at them, fined them, made them feel small, it was payback time. And me? I was just the guy mowing his lawn, the guy she picked a fight with. She didn't know I'd talked to those neighbors. She didn't know I'd heard about their complaints. She didn't know the cops were already onto her before she even dialed 911. Who saw that coming? I said out loud, mostly to myself, but loud enough for her to hear. Karen glared at me, her eyes like fire, but she couldn't do anything. The cops had her. Her big plan to get me in trouble had flipped upside down. Instead of me getting hauled away, it was her. Instead of her winning, she lost. Big time. Her 911 call didn't save her, it made everything worse. She'd called the police right to her own front door, and they were ready for her. The mustache cop started walking her toward the car. She dragged her feet, still yelling. "This isn't fair. You've got the wrong person." But they didn't stop. The short-hair cop picked up her phone from the grass and followed behind. They were taking her away, and there was nothing she could do. I stood there, leaning on my mower, watching it all happen. It felt good. Really good. Like when you finally win a game after losing a bunch of times. Karen thought she had all the power. She thought she could boss me around, call the cops, and come out on top. But she was wrong. The cops weren't there for my mower. They were there for her lies, her tricks, her mean ways. And now everyone could see it. The neighborhood wasn't hers anymore. Her crown was gone, and she was just a lady in flip-flops, getting led to a police car. Karen was a mess as the cops led her away. She kept talking, her voice loud and shaky. "This is outrageous," she yelled. "I'm in charge here. You can't do this." She twisted her head around, looking at me, then at the cops, then at the houses nearby. But nobody cared what she said anymore. Her words didn't mean anything. The neighbors weren't scared of her now. They were done listening to her bossy nonsense. The cops didn't stop. They walked her right to their car, one on each side of her. She dragged her flip-flops on the ground, still trying to argue, but it was no use. People started peeking out their windows. Curtains moved, and faces popped up. Some neighbors even stepped outside, watching with big eyes. A few of them clapped quiet at first, then louder. They were happy. They'd waited a long time for this. Seeing Karen get taken away felt like a party starting. Me. I just stood there by my lawnmower, smiling a little. Then I started it up again. The vroom vroom sound was back, and I finished mowing my lawn in peace. It sounded sweeter than ever, like music to my ears. The police car drove off with Karen in the back. She was still yelling, but the windows were up, so it was just muffled noise. The neighbors waved as the car turned the corner and disappeared. My yard looked great now, nice and even, with short green grass. I turned off the mower, wiped my hands, and sat on my porch. The sun was still shining, and everything felt calm. For the first time in a while, the street was quiet. No Karen. No shouting. Just peace. Later, we found out the real story. It was juicy. Karen had been scamming the HOA for years. She'd been taking money from people, fines she made them pay for silly things like too tall grass or wrong paint on the mailbox. But she didn't give that money to the HOA. Nope. She kept it for herself, stuffing it in her pockets like a sneaky thief. She also made up rules that weren't real, just so she could boss everyone around and feel important. The neighbors finally caught on, and they told the police everything. That's why the cops had a warrant. That's why they came for her. After that, big changes happened. The neighborhood got together and picked a new HOA board. No more Karen. The new people were nice, they didn't yell or make up fake rules. They just wanted the street to be a good place for everyone. And you know what? It worked. Things got a lot quieter around here. No more clipboard marches. No more angry notes on doors. Just kids playing, dogs barking a little, and regular days without drama. Karma's funny like that, isn't it? Karen thought she could trick everyone forever, but she got caught. All her mean plans fell apart, and she ended up in trouble instead of me. I got to mow my lawn, the neighbors got their peace back, and Karen? Well, she got what she deserved. It felt fair. It felt right. What a day. So here's the thing, friends, sometimes the loudest person in the neighborhood is the one hiding the biggest secrets. Think about it. Karen was always yelling, always bossing people around, acting like she owned the whole street. She thought she was the strongest, the smartest, the best. But she wasn't. She had stuff to hide, big, sneaky stuff like stealing money and making up rules. She thought she could control everyone, but she didn't see me coming. She didn't see the truth sneaking up behind her. And when it hit, boy, did she fall hard. That's what makes this story so cool. Karen was loud and pushy, but I stayed calm. I kept mowing my lawn, kept smiling, kept going. I didn't let her scare me or stop me. And guess what? The truth won. The neighbors won. I won. Karen thought she was running the show, but she tripped over her own game. She didn't even know the cops were there for her, not me. It's funny how that works, right? Sometimes the people who act the biggest are the ones who crash the hardest. Here's a little tip for you: next time someone tries to boss you around, don't freak out. Don't yell back or run away. Just smile and keep doing what you're doing. Maybe it's a bully at school, or a grumpy grown-up telling you what to do. Don't let them trick you into feeling small. Keep going, stay strong, and wait. You never know when they'll mess up all by themselves. People like Karen think they're in charge, but they don't see the whole picture. You might surprise them one day, just like I surprised her. This story teaches us something important. It's not about being the loudest or the meanest. It's about being smart and patient. It's about knowing the truth is stronger than any big voice or fake rules. Karen didn't get that. She thought shouting and pointing fingers would keep her on top. But the neighbors were tired of it, and I wasn't scared. Together, we showed her that being mean doesn't win. Being fair does. Being brave does. So what do you think? Have you ever had a Karen moment like this? Maybe someone tried to boss you around, and you found a way to stand up without even fighting. Or maybe you saw someone loud get caught in their own silly trap. I'd love to hear about it. Tell me your stories down below. I read everything you say. It's fun to share and see how we all deal with pushy people sometimes. Thanks for sticking with me through this wild tale. It started with a lawnmower and ended with justice. Pretty awesome, huh? I'll see you in the next story. There's always more to tell. Keep being you, keep smiling, and don't let the Karens of the world get you down. You're tougher than they think. See you soon.